I finally did it. I found the perfect apartment. 10th house level, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a view of the city that just takes your breath away. The first week was a dream. I spent my days unpacking, arranging furniture, humming along to my favorite songs. This place, Unit 138, felt like the start of something new, something great. I even bought this ridiculous, oversized, bright yellow armchair. It was an impulse buy, totally clashed with everything else, but I loved it. It was my little splash of chaos in an otherwise perfect space. Life was good, but then, things started to get weird. It began with the apartment across the hall, 13B. The door was always shut, no sounds ever came from inside. I figured it was just vacant. One afternoon, I was heading out and the door to 13 Bytes was slightly ajar. Curiosity got the better of me. I pushed it open and peeked inside. My heart skipped a beat. It was empty, completely bare, but it was an exact replica of my apartment. The layout was identical, a perfect mirror image. Same kitchen placement, same bedroom door, same massive windows looking out onto the same cityscape. It was unsettling, but I just chalked it up to a common building design. That night, I was standing by my window, looking out at the city lights. My gaze drifted across to the windows of 13B, and that's when I saw it. In the dark glass, I saw my own reflection, but it wasn't just a reflection. The apartment was dark and empty, yet there I was, clear as day. I stood frozen, watching my own image stare back at me. And then, it smiled, a slow, wide grin that didn't touch its eyes. I hadn't smiled. I hadn't even moved. I slammed my curtains shut, my heart pounding against my ribs. It had to be a trick of the light, a figment of my imagination. It had to be. The next day, I tried to forget about it. I went to work, came home, and forced myself into a normal routine. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I avoided the windows, keeping the curtains drawn. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing faint noises, a soft tapping on glass, a floorboard creaking. Were they coming from my apartment or from across the hall? I finally crept to the peephole and looked out. The hallway was empty. But as I pulled back, I saw the peephole on 13B's door darken, as if someone on the other side had just leaned in to look out. I decided I needed proof. I needed to know if I was going crazy. I set up my phone to record my window overnight, aimed directly at 13B. The next morning, I watched the footage with trembling hands. For hours, it was just the dark, empty window. But then, around 3 a.m., a light flickered on in 13B. Not a real light, more like a ghostly glow. And there he was, my reflection. He walked around the empty apartment, his movements mimicking my own from earlier that day. He made coffee in the non-existent kitchen, sat on a non-existent sofa. Then, he walked over to where my ridiculous yellow armchair should be. He patted the empty space, then looked directly at the camera, at me. And he waved, a slow, deliberate, mocking wave. That's when the real fear set in. This wasn't just a reflection. It was something else, an entity, a doppelganger. And it was getting bolder. The next evening, I was in my kitchen making dinner. I glanced out the window and saw him in 13B. He was there too, in his mirrored kitchen. But he wasn't empty-handed. He was holding a knife, the same model as the one I had in my hand. He mimicked my chopping motions, but his were faster, more aggressive. He stopped, held the knife up, and drew it slowly across his own throat. I dropped my knife. It clattered to the floor. I backed away from the window, my breath catching in my throat. I couldn't stay here. I started packing a bag, throwing clothes and essentials into a suitcase. I had to get out. As I frantically tossed things together, I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. I looked at the window. He was there. In 13B. He was packing too, a mirror image of my frantic escape. He zipped up his invisible bag, slung it over his shoulder, and walked towards his front door. My front door. My blood ran cold. I heard the lock on my own door click. I froze, listening, a soft scraping sound, like a key sliding into the lock from the outside. No, it couldn't be. This was my apartment. He was in there. I was out here. Or was it the other way around? The doorknob began to turn. Slowly, I was trapped. The line between my world and his was gone, and he was coming in. I scrambled for a weapon. Anything. I grabbed a heavy lamp from the end table. The door creaked open. It wasn't him standing there. It was just the empty hallway. For a second, I felt a wave of relief. It was all in my head, a nightmare. Then I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck. I spun around. He was already in the room with me, standing right behind me. He wasn't in the window anymore. He was here. He looked just like me, but his eyes were hollow, empty voice. And he was smiling that same, horrible, wide grin. He didn't say a word. He just pointed. He pointed at the big, bright yellow armchair in the corner. I followed his gaze, and I saw myself, sitting in the chair, staring blankly ahead, a thin trickle of drool on my chin. My own body, catatonic, lifeless, my mind snapped. The me standing in front of me wasn't a reflection. It had taken my place, and I was the reflection. I was the ghost trapped in the wrong apartment. He raised a hand, and my vision started to fade, the room dissolving into darkness. The last thing I saw was him, my double, picking up my suitcase and walking out the door, whistling a familiar tune, my tune. He was starting his new life. My new life, and I was left here, in the dark. In the empty apartment across the hall, just a memory in a room no one would ever enter again. My hand pressed against the cool, unyielding surface of the mirror. On the other side, the apartment was empty, a hollow shell of the life I once knew. My own apartment, but I wasn't there. I was here, a silent echo trapped in the looking glass. Panic clawed at my throat. I screamed, but no sound escaped. I pounded on the glass, my fists making no impact. No nose, just a phantom ripple on the silvered surface. Days blurred into a seamless nightmare. I watched him, the other me, move into my home. He unpacked my books, arranged them incorrectly on the shelf. He slept in my bed, his breath fogging the very glass that imprisoned me. He even answered my phone, laughing with my friends, reassuring my mother that everything was fine. I was a ghost in my own life, a spectator to a theft so complete it erased my very existence. I tried to break the connection. I refused to mimic his movements. When he shaved, I stood perfectly still for a terrifying second. His reflection, my body, did the same. His eyes widened in the mirror, a flicker of confusion crossing his face before he shook his head and continued. He saw an anomaly, a trick of the light. He didn't see me screaming for help. Then, one evening, he brought her home, my fiancée. He kissed her, and I felt the ghost of it on my own lips. As they embraced, I looked past them, through the window of my apartment. In the building across the street, in a window just like mine, I saw another me. He was pounding on the glass, his face a mask of silent, screaming terror, just like mine. And I finally understood. We were all just copies, trapped in an endless hall of mirrors.